Hello, everyone. Welcome to, I guess we call this the Intentional Optimist Guest Speaker Series. I've started putting it on LinkedIn and I've started putting it on my personal Facebook page. It's always been in my Facebook group. So if you are not going to be able to catch the rest of this live, I will definitely save it over my Facebook group. So if you're a woman who wants to be in a community of women who support each other, the Intentional Optimist is a great place for you. So pop over there, request to join, and then you can see all the other guest speakers I've ever had. So today I would like to welcome Sonia Frontera.
Well, hello, and thanks for the warm welcome.
We just did, and we actually didn't talk. Did we talk before Christmas? I think it was when we recorded our podcast.
Yes, it was because I hadn't gone to Puerto Rico. That was before December 9th. Yes.
Yeah. So it was early, but I had the privilege of re-listening to it in order to get it ready to launch and to be published on Monday. So if you have not heard the podcast episode with Sonia, it's a good one. You get her story, you get to hear from her some wonderful things some insights and some leadership ideas. So, but what I like to do is I get their story on the podcast. And then I like to share with you my audience, and it looks like maybe some of Sonia's audience as well, really what she does and how she works with people. So that's kind of what we're going to be doing here today. And for those of you on Facebook, if you have not given StreamYard the ability to see your personal data, Facebook protects you. So if you do leave a comment, which we will be happy to answer your questions during this. I'm going to let Sonia do a little bit of talking. We've got a few pre-approved questions that have come through. But if you would like a question answered, or if there's anything you want to share with us, please definitely drop it in the comments. I'll be able to see it and be able to share it with Sonia as well. So you do have to give Facebook permission or StreamYard permission to use your Facebook information. Otherwise, you will come through as a Facebook user. If that's cool with you, go for it. So I see that we have a couple of people in here, and it looks like we are ready to go. So Sonia, for those who have not actually listened to the podcast episode, why don't you give us a little bit of an idea of who you are and what you do?
I am the divorce lawyer with a heart. I am an attorney. I've been practicing law for 26 years now. Believe it or not, it's a lifetime. And I am doing divorce law now, which is something I never envisioned in a million years. And what I'm doing now, not only am I the divorce lawyer with a heart, but I am following my heart, and I'm expanding my role and growing into other areas that are really my passion, which is empowering others, and writing, which is what I wanted to do all my life. That's what I wanted to do when I was in high school. And yes, I wanted to be a writer. And I never imagined I would end up here or to get here the way I did. Because when I was in high school, my dream was to be a writer in a lighthouse. I had already found a lighthouse right off the southern coast of Puerto Rico. And I said, I want to live in that island. And I want to be writing at the top of the island with my little chihuahua. And people would come to my life only by invitation. I just wanted to be some sort of hermit, which is actually the mascot of my high school.
A hermit?
The hermits, yes, because we were a Catholic school that was run by the Order of Saint Benedict, who was a hermit.
Yeah.
Yes. So I just wanted to be a hermit and write, and I ended up just not doing that in the beginning. And it just took a series of adverse life events to get me here. So to make a long story short, it took marrying very young to someone I discovered was psychologically abusive, going through a divorce, going to law school because I was in a dead-end job, and I wanted to do something more with my life that was significant. So as I was going through this terrible marriage, I went to law school, divorced my last year, and practiced law, not doing what I really envisioned to do. And then I had another adversity when I was pushing 50. I got afflicted with migraines and I had to end my work as a litigator with the government. And I opened my own practice. And a friend was a divorce lawyer, and divorce law is something I never wanted to do because I clerked in family court and it was awful, toxic.
Mm.
So I ended up talking to this friend, and she's like, "Oh, why don't you do collaborative divorce? I think you'd be good for it." And I discovered this area,
You say collaborative divorce?
collaborative divorce,
Okay.
which is an amicable form of divorce. And I
Okay.
said, I think I would be good at this because I'm a consensus builder.
Oh.
And so that's why I got into this area of the law. And now that I have the flexibility to be my best boss ever, I have given myself permission to write. And I figured divorce, relationships, and domestic abuse are some areas that I can really make a contribution because they're very sensitive. I have the personal and the professional experience in both areas. So now my mission is to help people, empower them as they go through adverse events in life, so they can turn them not into something that defeats you, but into fuel for transformation.
Absolutely. And, I was just recorded another podcast episode yesterday about grief that'll come out next week. But we do speak and teach from our experiences and
Mhm.
from our scars, right? And so I hear you discovered something that you knew you could do and an area that you knew you could speak to because you'd experienced it. So you had firsthand experience.
Absolutely. It's very different to write, let's say, as a psychologist about what you had learned in
Mm,
clinical practice if you haven't lived through it, or as a financial advisor, or as an attorney. And you see many of these professionals, they're very knowledgeable, but they don't have that inner experience that really helps you understand the issues and what your audience is really going through, because it's
mm.
very painful, it's very difficult, and you have to live through it to really understand what it does to your psyche and how you can get out of it too.
Well, and for somebody like me who's been blessed to have never needed to even talk to a divorce attorney, I don't it's when there's the pro of being able to speak from your experience, but then when something comes along when you don't have experience, we need to know who to talk to. So, this is something that a lot of times people will think, oh, well, that doesn't sound very optimistic. Well, I don't know. Maybe standing up for yourself is one of the most optimistic things you can do.
Yes.
So I loved having you on the podcast and the conversation that we had because it felt so very hopeful.
Yes, and I think that's where many of us are missing out. It's that lack of hope, that fear that it's the end of the world, right? And we all go through it. I went through it. And
Mm.
I was 24. And at that age, it was just so terrifying to feel like you would never love again, that you would never be loved again, or that you would be trapped in a marriage that is destroying you. And that's why I want to get out there and say, hey, it's the end of the world as you know it, but you can use this to create a new and better world for yourself
Yeah.
and
Sorry,
build
I was there
hope.
in my brain of that song. It's the end of the world as we know it. And and it is, and that particular comment has garnered a whole lot of response that we can actually rebuild from a place of power and confidence. And so you said you wanted to be an author. You now are. You have written several books. And one of the things that we said was that you would be giving away ebook copies of your of one of them. So we in the podcast show notes, we gave you information on how to do that. So you kind of need to go look, but we'll share a little bit of that at the end today before we go. We'll share, but tell us a little bit about your books and how they help others.
So I decided to write my first book. It's called Solve the Divorce Dilemma. Do you keep your husband or do you post him on Craigslist? And I decided to write this book because I wanted to help women who were going through the very same issues I was going through as I was contemplating the end of a marriage that was very painful. And for me, as a Catholic girl, as a conservative woman, as a non quitter, the thought of ending my marriage was very difficult. And I wanted to help people get the support I didn't have. I felt so alone and so
Mm,
disempowered through the process. And I wanted, and the books that were out there were not really helpful. The books about divorce were more about psychology and more about the psychological aspects of a relationship, right? And they were not really about empowering you, about giving you the courage and giving the support. And that's what I was lacking. And that's what I wanted to offer my readers. And I do this book as a journey of personal discovery and personal transformation, so you can find out how you got to this point, what
mm,
is keeping you trapped in a relationship that hurt you, realize whether or not you can turn things around and
mm.
save your marriage, and work with your spouse, or recognize that you and your spouse cannot revive this marriage, and make that decision to go your separate ways in a way that is productive, that is healing, and that helps you start over on a clean slate so you both can be happy. And I give also a lot of advice on ways to make the entire process, whether you stay together or you divorce, to make your life more on purpose and happier and more joyful, because we all deserve to be happy.
Yeah, and so a couple of things I wanted to bring up here, and I think this is a really good spot to bring in one of the questions that someone gave you earlier in the week for us to look at, um, because it's important to remember that from your perspective, divorce is not something that, because normally when you hear about a divorce lawyer, they're like, "Yeah, here's my card. You need to go," here, and that's kind of the stereotype that we hear about divorce lawyers. And you call yourself a divorce lawyer with a heart, but it's not that you're interested in helping people get a divorce. You're interested in helping people be happy and safe and productive. And the way you just explained all of that, you work with people not necessarily just on how to take care of ending the marriage, but what if this marriage is worth saving? And how can we move forward in a way that will, I love the you said healing, right? Because you're in your second marriage and now you've expressed it as like a happily ever after.
I landed a good one this time.
But you knew better, right? You learned
Exactly.
yeah.
I gave
Yes.
myself that time to heal. And that's another thing that I emphasize in my second book, that you really need to give yourself that time to heal and to bond with yourself in order to be able to recouple in a way that is healthy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, whenever, my husband's a pastor, so we work with couples. He specifically works with couples who are getting married and does premarital counseling. And, I was in my family, I was an old maid when I got married. I was 27. And so I know.
That should be the
And
minimum age in my book. And I don't
there
mean my books I write. Like I think that should be the rule. 27 and up.
there were so many messages that I'm not going to share that just
In
was not my
private,
family.
maybe sometime.
Yeah, I mean, there it was never intentional, but there was a lot of shame, but it was just because of my family system, everybody got married very young, and, all that to say, part of my journey to that point, and I wish I'd done even more of it, was what you're expressing to women or men to do after a divorce is to know yourself, right? To
Mhm.
be whole and complete before you, because nobody else is going to, we love to say, you complete me, but nobody
Oh
else
God,
is
I hate that.
really, right?
Oh,
Nobody else is really going to complete you, honey.
no.
And it's not, jumping from this one to that one is never going to make it work. So to be 100% in yourself, 100% whole, is exactly what you need, and to be able to attract the right. I mean, that was what we say on the first time, right? But if you can't get around, if you don't, or for some reason something went wrong, or you didn't know that, then I think it's great you're teaching that on the back end too.
Yes, and we are complete. We just don't know it.
Yeah.
We are equipped with everything that we need to
Yep.
create happy, healthy lives. But we don't see it that way. And that's why it's a journey of self-knowledge and transformation
Yeah.
to bring out
So
your best self.
you and I both, and we talked about the fact that we both come from religious backgrounds. We're both women of faith from different, like you're Catholic, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, you're Catholic and I'm Protestant. And one of the questions that came through I thought was very helpful that you, I know, struggled with, and
Mm.
anybody in my circle struggles with as well. Do you mind if I go ahead and read it for you?
Please go ahead.
Mhm. So, this question, I don't know, it's anonymous, comes from, it says, how do you deal when your family and your church both oppose divorce? And so that's one part of the question. But then she goes into another piece of that. So this is going to touch on both the church part and some other aspects to it. But she says, my husband drinks excessively and is mean to the children. I'm very unhappy, but I am not sure what to do. I'm afraid I'm going to lose everyone important in my life if I leave, and that my children won't forgive me. So I think there's two pieces to that. And I would love to hear your response. And then I will chime in just a little bit afterwards. I am not a divorce person, but I come from from a faith background.
Yes, and I see there's tons of pieces in here. Um, so let's see. I think I want to start with um, the being unhappy and my husband drinks excessively.
Okay.
And again, to me, the biggest thing is, are you safe? Because if your husband becomes violent when he drinks and is assaultive, you need to get help with domestic violence through an organization, through a counselor that is familiar with that. And that would be a first step if your spouse is abusive. If your spouse is just drinking excessively and it affects the marriage and your life in other areas, let's say, for example, if it interferes with getting a job or with having a relationship that is healthy between the two of you, you may want to get some counseling and go to an organization that would help you deal with someone who's an alcoholic so that you can come to terms of whether or not this is a relationship that can be saved. If the drinking is interfering with a relationship, that may not be the case. So you need to make that decision very carefully. And especially when it comes to the children, you need to factor them in. They're not going to hate you just because you're ending the marriage. You just need to be sensitive to their needs and make sure that they know that if you decide to end the marriage is not because you don't love them, that you would love them no matter what. And oftentimes your kids are going to pick up on what's going on. So don't
They're
assume
not
that
stupid.
they're not stupid. They know, they understand more than you give them credit for. So being in a marriage that is harmful to the children is worse for them. A marriage in which there's a lot of discord is worse for them. So when it comes, then let's move on to family support systems and the church. It is a very, very difficult decision to make. Sometimes people don't know what's happening in your relationship and they don't know what you're going through. They're not living through this drunk husband. They're not going through how it is affecting the children. So you need to gauge whether or not you can confide in these people or gain their support. You need to come to terms with the fact that sometimes the people we love are not going to support us.
Mm.
So if they don't, that should not deter you from making the decision that's right for you. And that includes the church as well. Because at the end of the day, you're the one who's living in this hell. So try to garner their support. And if you can't, or if you know for sure they're not going to support you, try to find your support in other areas, whether it's through a therapist or a positive support group. And you're your own press agent. That's something that I say to my readers.
Mm.
You get to choose what information you convey to these people, so you don't allow them to influence your decision in a way that is harming you. I know that for me, my parents were not keen on divorce. Any attempts at me hinting that there were problems in my marriage got some feedback from my mom that was annoying and not helpful. So when I was certain that the relationship could not be saved and I needed to get out, I kept her out of the loop until I had made my decision. I had filed for divorce. I had a court date and I already had a lease on an apartment. So
Yeah.
I was able to be strong enough to make this decision and to carry it out without somebody interfering or trying to stop me or discourage me or influence me in a way that was not going to be good for me. So that's the short answer.
Well, I'm going to add a little bit to your short answer from the perspective of somebody who gives counsel and coaches, having never experienced it. Um, but you and I have both talked about the fact that as a pastor, there are times we deal with domestic abuse and alcoholism. And I'm going to say to this person, the number one thing is safety.
Hmm.
Safety for you and for your children is more important than what anybody else in the whole world thinks. And if it means somebody's going to be disappointed, that is not as bad as lack of safety. And you went through that well. You said, it could be this person says that he's mean to the children. That's not safe. If there is any kind of actual physical abuse, that's not safe. Drinking is not safe because does he drive the car with the kids in it? And if it's affecting the job, that's not safe either because then you're looking at financial safety. Um, and quite frankly, if you're unhappy, then you cannot be a great mom. And the number one responsibility you have to your husband is to be a supportive and good spouse, and allowing them to go down this road is not good. And then these kids, they need at least one parent who's really going to think of them first and to be strong. And I love that you said, you can be strong and do this because the other piece is you're stronger than you think.
Oh, yes.
We're all so much stronger than we think. And a lot of it is finding, like you said, the people that can support us. Coming from a faith community, I will I will say if you need to find a different faith community, find a different faith community. And that's easy for me to say because I'm not in that position. Please, I don't want to belittle any of that. Um, because there are times I've wanted to find a different faith community. And,
Don't
um,
we all?
yeah, don't we all? But faith communities are never perfect. And just remember, if any one faith community values the appearance of what things look like over the reality of what things are, they don't have your best interest at heart. And if you're talking about church and we're talking about Jesus, he valued the person over the institution absolutely every single time. So take heart in that. And if you need to reach out to other people that are in that same faith community that give you that opportunity to say, as people, like you said, being your own press agent, controlling what goes out, I need to find somebody who's wise that I can talk to about this. So, and there are lots of opportunities out there for women to help you as well. So be encouraged.
Yes, I totally agree. One thing that I wanted to touch upon, since you brought that up, and that we didn't discuss before, and I think is really important. I don't want to leave this out, but never allow your marriage problems to get between you and God,
Hmm.
because that is the single most important relationship that you have.
Yeah.
And for me, and I have to confess, it made me so bitter against the Catholic Church that it rejected Catholic individuals. Okay, so you get a divorce, but then you're a second-class citizen in the church.
Mm.
And that riff with my church was very destructive in my heart. Never, and it didn't interfere with my relationship with Jesus, because
Yeah.
that's super sacred. That comes first. But for some people just get so away from not just the church, but from their faith itself, that it is just not helpful. You need to stay close to God, because this is the time when you need God the most.
Most
So
right.
don't let this marital problem interfere with that.
Yeah. And and the scale of eternity, it's more important to have that relationship in a good place than to have these relationships in a good place. And Jesus took care of all the sinners, right? And all of us are sinners, and that's what he did. And that was the way he reached out. And that's what the church should be doing. So please let us know if you need help finding those kinds of things. So I thought that was really good. So there was one other question. This one's a little bit less direct. It's more from a friend perspective, and it touches on the abuse as well. So I'll share this one, and we can have you answer that just a little bit because it's from a completely different perspective. This is about someone's best friend. It says, my best friend's husband acts in ways that I find abusive. He ridicules her in front of others, for instance, calling her stupid, or laughs when she makes a mistake or something, and yells at her and interrupts us, making demands every time we're on the phone, so our conversations end abruptly. I wonder if he's also abusing her physically. It makes my blood boil, mine too, and and I don't know what to do. Should I confront her, him? It's affecting our friendship, and I worry about her. Just, well, first I was reading this, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm ready to stand up to this dude. But
Yeah,
I
but
don't. Yeah.
don't.
Safety is key.
I know. And you know what? First of all, thanks for being a good friend.
Yeah,
That's what
absolutely.
friends do.
Yeah.
Friends care. And when I was going through my horrible abusive relationship, I went through some similar things. So I there's so much to unpack in this question. So let's see, where do we begin? Because first of all, be a friend. And last of all, before I get carried away talking, don't give up on your friend. Some people gave up on me. And
Mm,
instead of, because that's what abusive partners do, right? They try to
valid.
isolate you from your friends and
Mhm.
family and your
Yeah.
support systems.
Well, and I
And
wanna add one thing in there. Let's change the word, and you may do this, but let's change the word from confront to support. It's like, because I don't know that confrontation is really what's needed in an abusive thing. So
never.
yeah, so, maybe continue to ask questions, but I'm eager to hear what you have to say, and I love that definition. They wanna isolate you. So
Yes, I say that isolation is the power tool of the abuser,
mhm.
because that's how they get away with things. They isolate you from your friends and families so that you don't have anyone to support you and just keep you locked into that relationship so you can't get out.
Mm.
So never give up on your friend, and always let her know that you were there to support her. And in terms of isolation, those are the tactics, right? Embarrassing people in front of others so that they are
Mm.
discouraged from having those interactions. Um, like for instance, and I had this conversation with a reader who reached out to me. And we discovered as we're talking that our husbands had the habit of picking fights when we were going out with people, right? To get you all riled
Mm.
up and get you upset. So you are acting crazy and bitchy when you are with others. So you look like you're the problem in the relationship.
Yeah,
That's one of the things they
absolutely.
do. And they snoop on conversations and they try to end them. I know that my ex-husband would do things like, when I was on the phone at the end, so did your mother give you more advice? What did the commander have to say? Or if I had a male friend, oh, so you have a date with your boyfriend. So these are behaviors that are abusive, and they're designed to isolate you and discourage you from reaching out to your friends, and it makes friends uncomfortable. I know that some people locally stop going out with me because
Mm.
when you get together with your friends, or when you have interactions when your friends and family that get the abuser all ticked off, you're going to either try to avoid them, or sometimes your friends are going to try to avoid you because it's uncomfortable. You don't want to be, nobody wants to be around a guy who's insulting someone in front of you. It's awkward.
Sure.
It's Nobody wants to do that. So, how to approach your friend? Don't confront, just like you said, support. You can say, hey, it makes me uncomfortable when Joe says X, Y, and Z. How does that make you feel? And make leave room for your friend to talk. If your friend wants to talk, make it clear that you're just listening without judgment, without offering advice or saying
Mm.
things like, because people always, they know the answers. Everybody has the answer to your problems, not their own,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we're all experts on everybody else's problems.
Absolutely. So don't say, oh, I wouldn't take that from Joe. No. Or if it were me, no, it's not you. So just listen. Don't offer advice. Just offer support and say, hey, listen, I worry about you. If you ever need me, know that I am here in whatever capacity you need me. And if you know for a fact that there is violence, you feel free to share with them some um, support systems that might be available for them, like a local domestic violence
Yep.
organization, and offer to go with them, offer to accompany them to court if they decide to go file a complaint, or if they're too scared to go talk to a lawyer. Just let them know that your support is unconditional and that you will be there no matter what.
That's what good friends are. And, this person, I'm sure the last thing I would like to add to that is just, remember that it's not her fault and
That's
that
right.
she is not weak because she's allowing these things. Somehow he's got her under his spell, or from personal experience, but maybe it was like a complete bait and switch, right? Just like you said, I had no idea,
That happened
and
to me. Hmm.
I have another friend who went through a horrible gaslighting, marriage. It was like she thought she was going nuts and she wasn't. And, so that was really, really hard. It surprised all of us when she said, I'm getting out, I'm filing for divorce. We're like, what happened? But part of that is because we just weren't able to see it. And if you've got somebody like this in your life, they can be really, really, really sneaky. And
They
so
are.
she may not know. So what she doesn't need is somebody saying, well, why don't you? It's, hey, you're a strong person. I care about you. I love you. And there's nothing wrong with you. Let's get you to a place where you can thrive.
Right. And you mentioned it's not your fault. And that's really key, because they try to make it seem, the abuser tries to make it seem like it's her fault,
Yeah.
right? And I wouldn't hit you. I wouldn't have to hit you if you wouldn't stop talking.
Mm,
No, the abuse is the responsibility of the abuser, not
yeah.
of the abused.
Oh,
And for those people who are being gaslit, awareness is your power tool.
yep. And it's a superpower. It's shocking when you see something. You can't unsee it. So, help is available. Please reach out. If Sonia or I don't necessarily know exactly what you need, we have people that we can share with you. And so please don't go it alone. And for somebody, if you've got a friend and you're the friend that sees these things, find ways to share information, and just be aware that he's probably always watching, and just know that. So,
That's right.
so I don't have any other comments or questions that have come through today. Do you want to, let's go ahead and share a little bit more about your books and where people can find you and the best way to get a copy of one of your books in ebook form?
So we spoke about the first one, Solve the Divorce Dilemma, and that is for women. So I wrote a second book, which is called Relationship Solutions: Effective Strategies to Heal Your Heart and Create the Happiness You Deserve. And I wrote the second book because men were intrigued by the title of the first book and started reading it
I love
and
it.
complaining. Yeah, they started complaining, boo-hoo-hoo, that it was biased towards women. And so I decided to write something that is gender neutral and can be used by men, and also couples can use it together. It's pretty much the same format. It's another journey of personal transformation and self discovery. And you can learn more about yourself. You can learn more about your partner, and you can do it together as long as there's no abuse. When there's abuse, these things are really not conducive to be done as part of a couple. But you can read it for yourself. If you're in an abusive situation, you will find it empowering. So this book is an expanded version. It touches upon a number of other subjects, more on the legal aspects of it, as well as how to remain productive. And it is a very useful tool for anyone who wants to have a more productive, useful, and purposeful life after going through marital problems, because marital problems are not the end of the road. They're a detour on the road to happiness. And it debunks the myth of the failed marriage and try to eradicate that belief that
Mhm.
that ending your marriage is a failure. It is not. A lot of people stay in marriages that have passed their expiration dates because they don't want to live with a label of failure attached to them for the rest of their lives.
Well, and
So
that quote got this many comments and engagement, that it is a myth that it's a failure. And for if we can't admit our mistakes, then what kind of a world are we living in, right? I mean, then that's talk about fixed mindset. We got to be able to grow, and it's easy for me to say I'm in a long-term healthy marriage, but I still want to put the message out there and make sure that all that people, that we, even especially those of us who have never been divorced, do not think of it as a failed marriage, right? It's not a failure.
or think of others that way, because I know that
Absolutely.
parents thinking that you're a failure, especially if you have lived with those dynamics where your parents see you as a failure, and you've gone through that abusive dynamic with a parent.
Yeah.
It will keep you into something that is not, it's not going to make you happy. It's not productive. So remember, it's not a failure. Wayne Dyer used to say there's no such thing as failure. You only achieve a result.
Right.
Understand that you're being presented with some life lessons that are very valuable. Distill the lessons and move on, and use those lessons to build your life anew.
Excellent. So if they want to win one of the free copies, this just came out on Monday. And so we'll see who does it in the podcast. I think we said if they would snap a picture of where they're listening to, like whatever platform they're listening to the podcast on, and then tag either both of us or one of us, that then they would win one of your books. How do you want to do that on here? Maybe share this live video when it's settled in, to like share it and tag us. How
Sounds
do you
good.
want to do
I
that?
like that.
Okay.
We can do
Okay.
it that way.
So if you want to win one of Sonia's books, and you can go, if I'll try and pull from my podcast show notes, but her author page at Amazon is in the show notes, and her and if you're on my Facebook business page, the podcast publishes right there, so it's really easy to find it, and all the show notes are right there, so you can just click on it and go straight to her author page and see all of her books, and that way you know exactly what you might want or need, quite frankly, because, and I like the way you defined, there's like one that's written specifically to women and one that's gender neutral, and it can be used for couples, which I love. That it's almost like counseling, but I like that you define that it doesn't need to be in an abusive situation.
Right.
um,
Right.
yeah, but if you go there, you can see her books, and make sure that you know which one you want, and then tag us, and maybe you will win one of the free ones.
Yeah. So I can't wait. Oh, and tell us, what did you like most about the
Okay.
podcast or the live?
Yeah,
I
tell
love
us.
feedback. I love feedback. So
We both do, and I think part of it is just being able to know, how did we help you? What did you learn today, or what did you hear that you really needed to hear? Right? And I am absolutely 100% positive that Sonia is available for more questions, as am I, and I know where to find her if you don't. So, with that, I think we will sign off. Is there anything that you would like to share at the last minute here, Sonia?
I just want everyone to know that I'm here for you. So feel free to reach out and send me an email at sonia@soniafrontera.com. Visit my website. I just love to hear from readers. How can I help? And what questions you have, like you said, because I would like to know so that I can address them for you. I can address them as a blog post or another live or in any way. And yeah, and let me know what's the best way to reach you too, right?
Yeah, perfect. So again, it's Sonia@soniafrontera.com. And that's an email. So anybody who gives out their email, y'all, you know that you can actually email her. So that's wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. This has been a delight and a pleasure. I have learned. And as always, I just love talking with you.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, my friend. Bye-bye.
Bye.